I'm going in search of witches.
Witches.
Witches. I guess you found me out, huh? Yeah. You should come around here on Halloween. You'd really see something then.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we all jump off the roof and fly.
You know, sort of like a coven.
You were placed fester under some strange sexual spell.
At what time will we be spellcasting?
Hey friends, I just wanted to issue a trigger warning before this episode. There is some conversation around death of a parent and the process of transitioning, in which I do go into some detail. There's also some conversations around chronic pain, and I just want you to know what the content is before you walk into the episode. So if these topics feel too heavy or too hard for you today or at any day, just go ahead and skip the episode, and I promise I'll be back with another one soon. Thanks so much. Hey there, witches, and welcome to Moonstone Witchery, the podcast where we talk about witchcraft and spirituality in a modern context. My name is Rianne Lockhart, and I am the head witch here at Moonstone Witchery, and I'm super happy to be here with you today at the start of Season 8. Yay, clapter! It's been a long time coming, and I am thrilled, excited, and happy to be here on Season 8, where I'm going to be spilling some tea and sharing some personal stuff and talking about some deeper layers of some of our self-work, shadow work, healing journeys, and tying them back into how they can pertain to our spiritual path and our desire to do witch work or to add some ritual in to that journey. I really believe that self-work and spiritual ascension are really one and the same. I started my career as a certified life coach, as many of you know, and it was through all of the self-work that I've done that I realized how much spirituality fit into those things. When I was very young, I escaped is the right word. I escaped from my family of origin and immediately just threw myself into healing work. And I'm going to talk about that with you a little bit here and then get into my topic today, which centers on chronic pain and chronic illness and what we can do about those things and how they can contribute to our ascension process, our spirituality, our healing, and all the things. So just for the context, a couple housekeepy kinds of things. You might hear in the background, you might hear me walking. Sorry if that's distracting. That is a part of what we're going to talk about today. And also, I am currently off of coffee because I have a stomach ulcer. And with my ADHD, caffeine is a way that I self-medicate with intentionality, the ADHD, because in my home, my wife is in recovery, so I will not have prescription strength stimulants in my home. So that is a choice that I've chosen to make, to not go on those medications. I have no judgment towards anybody who does medicate or who does not medicate. I don't tell anybody how to live their life. But for me, coffee keeps my brain focused. I am sharing this with you because today is a day where I'm a little bit struggly with retrieving words or staying on track or knowing what I'm talking about. So if this becomes a little more rambly than normal, I appreciate the grace of understanding that and holding a little bit of space for that, because I am really losing the line today at times, but we'll do our best. So when I escaped my family of origin, and this is a continuum, and this is also something I'm going to be speaking about in this season, the continuum of leaving an abusive dynamic, because this is nonlinear. Okay, so I escaped, I went back, I escaped, I went back. But when I first got out, I had been operating under the sneaking suspicion since I was probably like 10 years old that maybe something was wrong here in the household that I grew up in. Oh, other sidebar, you're going to hear my dogs bark at some point, and I just want you to prepare yourself for that so it doesn't catch anybody off guard. So maybe something's wrong here. Maybe the way that the most influential voice in my life, who's my mother, perceives the world and interprets it to me, that might not be so on the nose correct, right? Like I was sort of starting to contemplate that, because her default, which I think I might have shared here at other times, is everyone is out to get you. Everyone's bad and scary and dangerous, and they are out to get you, and nobody has good intentions. Everybody's mean. And that's due to the victim mindset of her narcissistic personality, wherein she cannot assume the best in others, no matter what. She actually honestly can't even assume or perceive good in others unless they are doing what she wants them to do. And so I had entered the world with the complete opposite default, though. I was like, wow, like there's so much goodness in the world. And I would meet people from that space from an early age of connection and unity and love and, idealism. There's that Pisces moon. And so I was like, I hear her. I see what she's saying. In my household, that's true. In the house that I grew up in, there was no safety there. It was myself, my father. I have 3 siblings, but they were all teenagers when I was born. And then there was me. And it was a volatile, aggressive, emotionally and sometimes physically violent environment. Like no one there meant the best. No one there was coming from kindness. And, we can reflectively look back upon that and understand, oh, well, we were raised in an abusive dynamic. So we're all just trying to survive. And survival in that environment looked like developing an armor that was pretty spiky. The safest way to stay safe there was to become what I call defensively aggressive, which is like you scare away the scary thing. Learn how to be mean yourself, right? And so, but I remember this conversation on the way to school one day, and she was driving me, and she was lecturing me about, people are mean, because it was like 6th grade girl drama, which 6th grade's always like a hard time, especially for girls. And there's like gossipy and everybody's outcasting everybody. And it was just like an intense environment. I was trying to process this with her. And that was when, well, everybody's mean. And I was like, I don't really think everybody's mean, because I'm not trying to be mean. And I think most people are kind of the same. Like, doesn't everybody just want to be loved? Like, these were thoughts inside my head. Like, couldn't everybody be nice if they felt loved and like seen and like accepted? Like, if everyone was given that, wouldn't they be nice? And that was the thought that lingered with me forever. And it was actually really hard for me in adulthood to break that thought, because my pendulum swayed so far from everybody's mean, right, to everybody's kind. We just have to see that in them and draw it out of them, which is another unhealthy way to maneuver in the world, albeit less damaging to others. However, there is some damage done to ourselves when we operate that way. And the real answer is always somewhere more honestly and somewhere more neutrally, and it's in the middle. And in the middle is like, some people are lovely and kind and just want to be seen. Probably the vast majority of people have an inner loving energy about themselves, have an inner kindness, if you were to love and accept them. And here's an important part, if they could accept and allow in your love and acceptance, then they would be kind. That's a whole other conversation. But some people, and here's the neutrality, the truth, some people are mean. And we can use diagnostic terms, personality disorders, trauma, struggles with, whatever. But some people are mean. And you can give them love, kindness, and acceptance, and they will convert it into unkindness. And so at the time when I left, I was in that, like, I don't believe her. I believe me, which is radical. I don't even know how I did that, except for the fact that I think that because of the psychic spiritual connection I've always maintained, I had my guides all the time, like, reinforcing that for me. Like, yeah, love is an answer. Yes, love and kindness does connect you all. Yes, live from that space. And I'm not saying I was nice, because I was not nice at that stage in my life. I didn't know how to be nice and feel safe in my life, you know. I learned how to be nice, and that's why I threw myself into self-work. And I did this because I wanted to run the experiment, and I wanted to see, like, what would happen if I healed and if I lived from that place. And so I extracted myself from that scenario, and I extracted myself from that mindset, and I worked really hard to reparent myself and to heal. And I'm sharing all of this because of the non-linear nature of the healing, because we go back and forth. I'm sharing this because I am still in the depths of unraveling the ways in which my upbringing has shaped me and still has some kind of a grip on me. I'm sharing this to validate those of you who were raised with a toxic mindset, to try to learn how to extract yourself and how to reframe and how to get out of it. And in a future episode, we're going to talk about that a lot more, because I really need to express that there's a lot of misunderstandings, and I have a whole soapbox to stand on about it from others. For those of us who experienced mental and emotional childhood abuse, and it is something that we're going to chat about. But what I'm dealing with right now, and I don't know how much tea this is, but maybe a little bit, there's way more to come. But what I'm dealing with in my life right now is the chronic pain situation that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. And it pertains somewhat because a portion of it is emotional. And I don't know about you, I hate that answer though. When I have a physical ailment, it is very annoying to me to hear about the emotional contribution to that physical ailment. And the reason that it's annoying to me is because I feel like the medical system and doctors use it to justify not giving you care. And it's all in your head, and disenfranchising you and gaslighting you and shutting you down. And there's misogyny involved, there's racism involved, there's like body shaming involved. I mean, there's all these biases involved with it, bringing up the whole like it's in your head situation. And I don't want to overlook that, because it's obviously a very flawed and pretty effed up dynamic that we're swimming in over here. And it is a part of some of the journey. So I chose this topic today when I was going to choose something else to start with, but I chose it today because it's really saturating my life, not from my own personal experiences alone, but because it's everywhere in my spaces, with close people who are close to me. In the academy, we're processing through a lot of that right now. And so I take cues from the universe as to what direction to go in, especially when I'm putting out content. And especially with this, people are struggling a lot right now. And interestingly, I have been studying, and I actually did like a obviously informal poll on my personal social media spaces, asking people like, hey, if you have chronic illness or chronic pain, when did it get worse? Like, did it get worse last April? And I'm playing with in my brain, and if this makes me sound nuts to you, that's okay. Just like go with it and choose to dismiss it or whatever. Add it into the matrix of how you perceive and receive me. But something was weird about that solar eclipse last April in 2024, the April 8th one. Something weird. There was something really weird about that eclipse. And I don't mean like, I know there's a lot of conspiracies like, oh, it wasn't even a real eclipse, the government faked it, or the aliens came or whatever. And I know nothing about that. I don't know whether they did or didn't. I do know that the energy of it was really whack. I refused to go outside during that eclipse. There's a lot of cultures that do this. They shelter in place. They do not like to expose themselves to the eclipse. And instead what I did was I held a meditation and I did a sound bath. And I actually think I went live. I did. I went live for that. And I did not go outside. But the energy that I became aware of in that meditation was intense. It was, the best word I can use for it was like anger. Like it was like an angry, intense, very significant shift of energy. Someone I know said that it felt like a blanket or a film had been put over everything. And I've noticed a couple interesting things since that point. Number one, a lot of people have been experiencing like a lot of intense ringing in their ears since then. And even I have. And I've asked my guides about that a couple times and I wasn't getting much of an answer. But then the other day they just randomly told me, yeah, there's like a frequency that you're hearing now. And it's you're tapping into something up there, that there's a frequency that is an added layer to things. And that's what you're hearing. And that's all they said. I was like, thanks for all the info. But so that's interesting. But additionally, shortly after that eclipse, I ended up in a chronic pain situation. And so when I did my informal poll, I was like, hey, just trying to put pieces together here. A lot of people experienced an uptick or a worsening of symptoms or a whole ass situation around that time last spring in 2024. And I just find that interesting. It's just, I don't have a conclusion, you know. The only thing that I'm kind of like connecting it to was that eclipse. There was a big Uranus-Jupiter conjunction that took place that hadn't taken place in a long, long time, like 200 years or something, that happened in April as well. And that was that was a really intense astrological situation. So it could be attributed to that. I don't know, but a lot of weirdness since then. And so I have a lot of people in my spaces who are struggling with chronic illness and chronic pain. And aside from the way that our culture does not validate these things enough, in my opinion, which, you know, is a whole rant that maybe I'll get to rant today, I don't know. That is a hardship for people. But aside from that, it's a very challenging experience to be the one who's holding the pain or the illness. And I'll say, it is a challenging experience to be the support person for the one holding the pain and the illness as well. And we can talk about that a little bit more later. But chronic pain, so I'll tell you what happened to me. My dad suddenly passed away, and sudden / not sudden. He had been sick for a couple years, but he was doing things to maintain his health to the best of his ability. And we were under the impression he had a little bit longer to live than he did. But there was a few circumstances that, in my opinion, pushed his health too far. I was blessed, in quotes, I suppose, with the knowing that my dad was going to pass away when he did. He was taking a trip that I did not believe his body could handle. And that was confirmed to me by my guides. So I knew that when he went on this trip, he was not coming home from it. I mean, of course, I didn't want that to be true. I wrestled with my own denial, but I knew. And I had talked about it with several of my friends. I had talked about it with my wife. I had tried to plan to kind of go with him just to escort him on the plane and my mother, and to be like nearby to where he was, because I knew that something was going to happen to him and I wanted to be close. But due to family dynamics, I was asked not to support him. And I suppose I'll explain a little bit more. I had a falling out with one of my sisters the 9 months beforehand, and I had decided to go no contact with her in the aftermath of that, which meant that I wasn't going to be attending. There's my dogs. That is not even the reason I thought they were going to bark. This is a delivery, and they will be barking again probably soon. I was not attending the wedding of my niece, which is her daughter, because the fallout I had with her was severe enough that I just did not want to be around her anymore, and I didn't want to be around really anybody anymore, and except for my dad. And he had to travel to Florida to go to this wedding, and I was very nervous about him traveling with all of the things that were going on with him. His health was not in great shape. He was on dialysis. He had some he had some issues with some aortic aneurysms that had been repaired, but he had chosen the repair route that would only give him kind of like 5-ish years to live, but he was 80 years old, so he was like okay with that. But I was very concerned with his health, and so I had wanted to escort him to this wedding, but go visit people nearby that we knew, and not be at the wedding in any capacity, just to get him down there, go stay somewhere 30 minutes away, and have my own little trip. I was asked not to go. I was asked not to escort him. Now, please know that in my mind, this was a very tough spot for me, because I don't want to assert myself over the wishes of somebody having a boundary about a family event that I had opted out of being there for. However, I was very afraid for my father's health. I did not want to explain to him, you are going to die if you go on this trip. And let's talk about that for a second, right? Because this is a moral and ethical dilemma. If I have a knowing that I believe someone's going to pass away, and I tell them, I have transferred the burden of that knowing onto them, and they are now faced with an impossible decision. Do I trust this? Are we sure? And you know, with these kinds of things, it's fluid. Readings are only as accurate as the timeline in which you're in, and as to the capacity of the free will of the person who is receiving the reading. Because we do have free will, a psychic can be right on point and super accurate with something they're knowing about you, but once you know about it, it's subject to change, right? And so, do I tell him and transfer the burden of the decision onto him, knowing what he's up against? Because let's play that tape out. If he believes me and he does not go, well, now it seems like I have tried to taint the water of this wedding. Now it seems like I have tried to manipulate things so that I cause drama in my family. If he believes me and he doesn't go, well, now he's in trouble with my mother who wants to go. Now he has to stand up for himself, which is something he does not do, because he's been living in an abusive relationship for 60 years. What kind of position does that put him in? All he's left with is to go along, get along to go along, or go along to get along, or whatever that phrase is. Because I know him, and I know that I don't think he's going to take a stand like that. I could have told my mother, who would have made a very big deal about it, and caused a lot of drama for my sister and my niece. And I didn't want to put my dad in that position, because also, what if I was wrong, right? You never have that 100% guarantee. Despite the fact that I've hardly been wrong about anything about like this in my career, you also as a daughter want to be wrong about this thing you know about. You don't want to be right. You want to be wrong. And so I gave him hints. I said, I don't know that your health is in a spot that you should be taking this trip. Are you sure? Because when I was asked not to escort them down, my mother likes to use me as something to fight about with everybody. So she was getting all riled up, wanting to argue, well, I'm not even going to go if you can't escort us down. And I said, Dad, do you feel like you're healthy enough to go on this trip? Yeah, I think I'll be fine. Are you sure? Because I'm getting a little bit worried about it. And it feels like maybe your energy's not really there. I gave him as much information as I could to feel him out. And he was going no matter what because they had other plans to go visit other people. I became very clear he was not going to change his mind. And so I did not burden him with this knowledge. But that is a tough spot to be in. When you are very intuitive or very psychic or very knowy of thingies, it's hard to know the things you know sometimes, friends. And so all you're left to do is say, what can I do with this information? And so I attempted to go, but I did not end up escorting him down. He was escorted by somebody else, and they got there fine. This event was held essentially on my father's 81st birthday. And that was, I believe, 2 days. It was less than 48 hours. It was probably 36 hours after he got there. And he had a catastrophic situation in his brain. And he ended up being rushed by ambulance on his 81st birthday to the hospital. And he did not recover consciousness after that. And I was called and told, of course, and I got on the first plane I could. And they waited for me to get there, but we did take my father off life support, and he did pass away with the children who chose to be there present. And I say that without judgment, because when you are in a situation where somebody is passing away, there is no right way to respond to that. There is only what is right for you. And I chose to be there. And there's a lot of beautiful synchronicities that took place about my dad's passing. His sister had died less than a month before he passed away. And he had actually, one of the last times I saw him, he had asked me to come to his house. And I know we're off on a little bit of a tangent here with the topic of this episode, but I think it's important. He had asked me to come to his house, and he was grieving the loss of his sister. And he said to me, Rian, what happens when you die? What did she go through? What was that like for her? What happens? And I was able to sit there with him for like 2 hours and talk to him about what it was like to transition and everything I knew about what the dying process is like, and how it's one of those times where you have to release and trust your body, because your body knows how to die. Just like if you're ever like throwing up and you're like, oh my God, am I going to like die while I'm throwing up? You just have to let your body, throw up for yourself. And you have to like let your heart beat. You don't know how to make your heart beat. You have to sometimes trust your body to do what it knows how to do. And death is one of those things. And I said to him, you'll feel okay. You'll sense people that you know. They'll be there. You'll sense an ease. You'll be able to sense an energy that you're allowed to kind of just gently slip into. And what you want to do is not fight against it. I was talking about the context of my aunt, and I was like, she just suddenly was like, oh, I can go to this familiar place and I'm free of like fear. I said, the most notable thing I know about dying is that you become free of fear once you start actually transitioning, because fear only lives in your body, and you have the invitation to either cling back to that fear, which anchors you back in the physical, or slip nicely into the safety and the familiarity and the love feeling that you're going to get saturated in. And I was like, and you'll see people, like, she saw grandmom, she saw pop-up, she saw, your brother who's already passed. She saw people she knew. She was safe and okay. And I had said to him, the thing with people who pass away is like, and as hard as this is for us to hear, like, they're happy there. They're okay. We are sad. but they have a home, like they are okay. And so I described a lot of this to him, and he had many questions, and it was like he had invited me for some spiritual counseling, which I greatly appreciated because my dad was such a philosopher and such an interesting person, and he loved to talk to me about all these kinds of things when I was young. But as he had gotten older and his health had shifted, like we didn't talk like this as much, but I felt very honored that he had invited me for this conversation. And when I found myself at his deathbed less than a month later, I was able to lean over and whisper to him, remember what we talked about. Here's exactly how this is going to go. I want you to feel okay. Don't worry. Don't panic. You can't help us from here now. So just lean into it. Let yourself rest. Like, doesn't it feel nice to rest? I was able to whisper to him, remember what we talked about. This, and this, and this is going to happen. Remember how, can you look up right now? Can you see that grandmom's probably in this room with you right now? Blah, blah, blah. And I found it amazing because I think somewhere in him, he was asking for himself as well as asking about her. It was twofold. We can do more than one thing at one time. And I was so glad that I was able to have that moment. And I was so glad I was able to be by his bedside. And I was so glad I could hold his hand and rub his head and tell him what to expect. And that was one of the hardest things that has ever happened, of course. And I'm sorry if this is triggering to anybody. I will write a trigger warning in the show notes and on any post I post about this topic. I should have done that in the beginning. Huge apologies for anybody that this is triggering. I think maybe I can add a recording to the beginning of it to do that actually. So that obviously was challenging, and it was fraught with challenges after, and it has been a whole ass situation. And I will definitely be speaking more on that in the after and in upcoming episodes. But here's the thing. Oh, and my father died on the day of that Uranus-Jupiter conjunction, which that was a whole thing. You know, Uranus breaks things down. It's kind of like a destroyer. It's a lightning bolt. It's an earth shaker. It's in charge of earthquakes. So within a couple weeks, maybe less, by the time I gotten back home, I found myself in excruciating pain. I mean, I could not sit. When I would stand up from sitting, a pain would radiate from my lower back down my leg, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. Nothing would alleviate this pain. And I had some pain in my hips and my lower back, you know, all through my life, especially since I had children. But it was coming and going. It was there, but ignorable. Like, I worked around it. But what this was something else. And this pain got worse and worse and worse, to the point that I was at a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10 every day. The only thing that alleviated this pain was walking. So I was walking. I set out on a walk that lasted for 9 months. The only way the pain would subside was if I would walk and walk and walk. And when I stopped walking and I stood still, the pain would radiate. And if I stopped walking and I laid down, I could lay down for maybe 2 hours, 3 if I was lucky. And if I stopped walking and I tried to sit, I could not. So I entered a world of standing and walking and occasionally laying down. And of course I went to the doctor and they were like, oh, you have some herniation, you have a herniated disc and a little bit of bone spurs and stenosis or whatever, and you have like this other disc is herniated, but really what's going on is like this disc herniation that you have is pushing on a nerve root, and those nerves are screaming 24/7 in pain, and really there's not a lot we can do about that. We can do injections, we could put you on opiates, and I was like, thanks but no thanks, this is a recovery home, we're not doing that. And also, I don't even like that. So I was on a journey of healing, which many of you who experience chronic pain or chronic illness, you understand this journey. And it is non-linear, right? It's like we go from doctor to doctor. We go from expert to expert. We start looking up like medicinal, herbal, like remedies, like what do I do? Shamanism, which is not okay really, or like Reiki, or all these great things that could help us. We look into everything. We're desperately trying to find an answer. And I did one of their injections and it did not help me. And I did spinal decompression therapy and that somewhat helped me, except due to my hypermobility, that is not an actual feasible option for me because it's dangerous for someone with hypermobility to do intensive spinal decompression therapy and blah, 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 blah. This is not necessarily an episode about what worked for excruciating back pain, although I will say the only way that I found relief was through acupuncture and physical therapy. And that's the physical healing, and CBD and medical marijuana and a lot of different salves and creams and balms and healing candles and the things you throw at something so chronic and so intense that it is all consuming. Because here's the thing, when you're in chronic pain, and this is the portion where I want, if you don't have chronic pain or chronic illness, I want you to try to listen to what this is like. And if you do have chronic pain or chronic illness, I want you to please feel some validation in this. Because the thing about chronic pain and chronic illness is it is your life. And that is against your own will. You don't want it to be your life. You have a whole life that you want to have. You have a whole life you want. And you can't do it because there is something loud and screaming in your face that is saying, I don't care what you want. You have to manage this first. And it takes over your time, your energy, your thoughts, your whole body, your physical experience. And it is overwhelmingly big. You try your best to work around it, but the pain or the illness is too loud. It is like a big bouncer standing in the door blocking your path. Can you slip by him sometimes? Yeah. Can you always slip by him? No. And that is where I've been for so long. I have been pacing my life and walking off my pain for months. And there are days when you are in this much pain that you don't know how you will live through it, or if you even wish to, which is a whole space to be in. And then there are days when you randomly have hope. And the thing that I want you also to know and understand about chronic pain and chronic illness is it is unpredictable AF. One day your pain might be less than the day before, and you search your mind. You're like, what did I do right? How can I replicate that? And then another day your pain will be absolutely terrible, and you're like, but I thought I did all the right things. What did I do wrong? How can I avoid that? And all the while, you are managing the situation through whatever means you have discovered on how to manage the situation, and you are just trying to manage it so you do not spiral out, so you can continue to survive, so you can continue to just even be present. Now, when I found myself in this circumstance, I was deep in grief, but I was also deep in narcissist management of my mother, who does not allow there to be space for someone else to have grief. To this day, my dad died 9 months ago. The other day was the 9-month anniversary of his death. To this day, my mother has never once acknowledged to her children that we have lost our father and that is difficult for us. It hasn't even occurred to her. And so I had grief. I had management of someone behaving very poorly. I have children at home. I have a business to run. My wife was triggered out in her own regards by the loss of my dad and having her own hard time, I was alone. I was alone in an immense amount of pain. And one thing that I realized when the pain was really bad was I would begin to panic. I would wake up after 3 hours of sleep and have to walk because that was my nights. Like, lay down for 3 hours, get up and walk for at least 1, sometimes 2, until you are okay enough to lay down again. And I would wake up and I would be like, and I could hear future me sometimes watching, because I do that thing where I communicate with myself from the future. And I remember waking up one morning and I was like, future me was watching me, and I heard her go, "Oh God, we're still in this pain era. I hate this part." And that was all I heard. But that sentence gave me hope. Like, oh, still in the pain era. Eras end. That must mean there's an end, right? But also that sentence really summed it up, because getting up, returning to consciousness was a horrible experience every single time. Because you know how that thing happens when you wake up and you're flooded with everything that's your life is at that current point in time. It's like, oh yeah, daddy's sad. Oh yeah, my mom's going off the rails. Oh yeah, this is happening. Oh yeah, that is happening. Oh my God, I'm in all this pain. But the pain's the first thing you notice. And I remember I broke one day and I was like hysterically crying in my kitchen. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. And I recognized this as panic. And when my children were little and they would panic, I would say, it's going to be okay. Stop panicking as much as you can. Breathe. The panic is just panic. And I said to myself, I am not allowed to panic like this, because panicking disempowers me. Panic centers all the control on the pain or the whatever that you're struggling with. Panic centers it somewhere else, and panic makes me think I'm not going to live, I'm not going to survive, I'm beholden to circumstances, I'm scared, I'm powerless, I can't do it. So you know what I said to myself? I said, it's just pain. Now, please hear me with "it's just pain" with a certain context, because I am not saying it's just pain, get over it, you're fine. That is like literally, that's the opposite of what I'm saying. What I said to myself was, it's just pain. I labeled it. I identified it. Because in my panic, what had happened was, it's bigger than pain. It's going to get me. It's going to kill me. It's going to eat me alive. It controls me. It's in charge of me. It's all powerful. It's this big godlike force. But when I was able to say it's just pain, I got my wits about myself. And I was able to be like, oh, it's just pain. I can take things with me. I can have pain, and it can be everything that I'm doing. But that doesn't mean it supersedes me. The pain is here with me, but it is not in charge of me. It is just pain. If I can name it, I can manage it. And that didn't mean the pain was less, but it meant my panic stopped. And when my panic stopped, I could have my wits about myself. I could be like, okay, center, breathe. Yes, there is excruciating pain. And you are yourself. There's the dogs. Yes, there is excruciating pain, and you are yourself. And because you are yourself, you've lived through pain. You've lived through all forms of pain. Emotional pain, mental pain, physical pain, spiritual pain. You know pain. And you're still you. So because I was still me, I was like, all right, I'm going to be me with a fuck ton of pain. But it's just pain. It doesn't supersede who I am. It doesn't replace me. It doesn't become me. It's going to come with me, but I'm not going to panic because I'm still here. And this is an inner strength that I want to share with you. It is a mindset shift that was what I needed. I'm not diminishing the experience. I had multiple times after that where I descended into panic again, and I had to slap myself across my own face metaphorically and say, it's just pain, you can do this. But that shift, that center back on my own empowerment made all the difference to me, because I was giving away, I was falling into fear. And I can't stand letting fear be in charge of my life. And I can't stand turning over my empowerment to something that I don't even like or want. So it's just pain. And I took that pain with me. I took it on my walks. I took it with me to when I went to bed. I took it with me. But I was still there. And it evolved into a place where I was like, okay, well, clearly I'm not in charge of whether this pain is here or not. Clearly there's some metaphorical, symbolic situation happening here with this pain, because my father dies and my back just collapses in on itself. And he was the only kind person that I've ever really known. And he was the only person, especially the only hetero-cis male that's ever been nice to me and hasn't had some crazy, creepy, scary alternative agenda. He was the only person I could really depend on, that I knew deeply, and I knew he was never going to hurt me on purpose. When you have one stable person in your world and they die, it makes sense for your back to collapse. And so I knew that there was an emotional attachment to this situation, but I also knew it was manifested incredibly physically. But I looked, right? What can I do? What do I have control over? I can walk. For now, that's all I could do, right? I can walk, though. I can. And for you, it might be I can rest. Or for you, it might be I can sit, or I can sleep, or I can lay down, or I can whatever it is. Find your thing that you can do. Because as I walked, I was like, first I was very victimized by it. I couldn't work. I couldn't spend time with the kids. I couldn't go in the car. Couldn't drive anywhere. Couldn't even sit in a car. It was so painful. I couldn't do anything else but walk. And I was very upset about this. But once you walk for a month straight, you can either continue to be very upset and you can feel like the victim and you can just torment yourself with your own interpretation of events. But I hate living like that. And so I said, how do I make walking mine? And I decided to find joy in what I could do. And what I could do was one thing. I could walk. So I took my phone and I put on headphones and I listened to music and I walked my neighborhood. I was up all hours of the night, so I took pictures of every sunrise. I was alone all the time, so I hung out with my dogs and I fed the birds and I met a cat that lives in my neighborhood and I watched the seasons shift. And I talked to my guides and I learned how to be in my body. Because one thing I'll tell you is that pain is the most grounding thing. Pain and illness will ground you into your body. And I had been told by my guides for years, learn how to be in your body. Because I didn't like it there. My body had not shown me anything but trauma, in my opinion at that time. And I don't want to do it. Why would I be in my body when I can just be on the astral plane and talking to spirit all the time? It's much nicer there. I learned how to be in my body. I learned what groundedness really is. I learned to connect. Because I accepted the circumstance. And I found what was possible in it. And it wasn't the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to make a podcast. I wanted to be in my spaces. I wanted to hang out with my kids. I couldn't do that. I wanted to go places. I wanted to go on vacation. I had to walk. I had to learn how to be in my body. I didn't want to. But I said, if this is where I have to be, how do I make it my own? Somehow, there must be a way. And that is what I did. And that is what has saved me. Life is going to put us in the darkest, most terrible places sometimes. And we can either live in fear of that darkness, or we can make it pretty. I always want to be someone that wherever I am, I'm home with myself. I'm there with me. And wherever I am, I make it mine as much as I can. I bring my safety with me. That's how I helped myself. Now, if you're someone who knows someone in chronic pain or chronic illness, what I really want you to do is to do a couple things. I want you to validate them. There is a loneliness in pain and illness that I don't think is talked about enough. The whole situation is saturated in fear and loneliness and uncomfortability. Every moment is hard. If someone has an illness that flares up from time to time, but they seem okay the other times, their life is still hard because they don't know when the flare-up's going to happen. And when they are in the flare-up, it is really hard. If you know someone who is consistently, chronically not okay in their body, every moment they are more aware of their physical circumstances than anybody who does not have that experience ever really is. And I know that from experience. I want you to validate them. I want you to take a second to say to them, and if you're in the situation, I'm saying this to you, I know how hard it is every single day to be you. I am sorry that is your experience. It makes me sad. And I see strength, courage, and bravery in you. I see power in your willingness to show up. I see beauty in the fact that you have a smile on your face. And I see beauty in the fact that you let yourself cry sometimes too. I see truth in you. I see how you struggle. I see how you fight. I see how hard this is. And I know that you did not choose this for yourself. And I know that you would not choose this for yourself. And I know that you don't want this for yourself. And I still see you existing and showing up. And that is a huge win. I know how loud this is. I know how hard it is. I know how overwhelming it is. And I am proud of you for anything that you managed to do. Because, friends, if someone in your life is going through that, that is the truth of their experience. And people who haven't experienced it don't understand. And I didn't used to understand. And that's one of the reasons that I'm glad I experienced this. There's a lot of things I'm happy about with this experience. I learned how to be in my body finally. And I learned what a gift that is. I learned how to process my emotions through physical movement. I learned how to be alone and scared and upset and to heal myself, to talk to myself. I learned how to find resilience. I learned not to be scared. I learned how to say it's just pain. I will rise above that. I have a very radical defiance about myself. And I'm willing to share that energy, or not share it with, but distribute it out to you if you want. Access the realm of radical defiance for yourselves. Because I am just in this space, man, where, and I've been here pretty much my whole life, The space I'm in is like, I am not going to let anything take me out unless I decide. And I don't always decide right away. I don't always know that that's an option. I forget. But I am like, you know what? Life is on my terms. People are out here making billions of dollars. Life's on their terms. They don't feel sorry. And I'm out here and you're out here doing your best to be a kind, loving, beautiful person, and we feel sorry about everything all the time? Absolutely freaking not. If life was on our terms, what would we do, friends? We would make the world more beautiful. We would be coming from love. We would be saying most people would be good if they were loving, if they were loved on, if they were treated kindly, if they were connected to and seen. That's what we would do if things were on our terms. So I went ahead and I made life on my terms. And every single time life tries to push me over, or circumstances come along, I have to recircle back to that. And I have to be like, this is going to happen on my terms then, because I exist and I don't let things tell me what to do. And I want to bring love and gentleness and beautiful energy to people in the world. And so do you. So do you. Because that's what we believe. We believe in elevating the energy. And so what do we do when our energy is not elevated, when our energy is low and on the floor and feels scary and beaten down? What do? We elevate it. It is through doing this with ourselves that we learn how to do this with the rest of the world. It is through doing this with ourselves that we deeply learn who we are and how to be and how to get out of this whole rut of a situation, because the world right now is in a bad space. It is in pain. And so we got to look at it. And instead of saying it should be this way, it should be that way, this is so bad, this is so scary, it's just pain. What are we going to do about it? Where are the places we can control? What are the things we can do? It is not what I want it to be, but it is what is in front of me. How do I make it mine? And how do I elevate it? How do I make it beautiful? How do I make it lovely? How do I saturate it in healing and love? Or whatever your personal things are. How we tackle our own hardships gives us the tools to pay it forward to the collective, to help the collective tackle collective hardships. Because the way we embody ourselves influences the whole rest of everybody who's here, and that is an absolute fact. And if you don't know about that, go back and listen to the first couple episodes of season 7, where I already laid the foundation for how that works. It's like self-love and collective consciousness are the 2 episodes that you can go revisit for how that works. So if you're in pain or chronic illness, I see you, I validate you, I love you. And if you know someone in that situation, do your best to validate yourself. They are in pain. They are struggling. I have my own experience based on that. What can I do? What kind of person do I want to be to myself and to them? And be who you need to be. And all of us need to recenter back on ourselves and on accessing what we can control, what we do want to give that, what we are, and what we want things to be like. So this episode kind of went a lot of different places, but I'm grateful for you for listening. I'll come back again soon. I'm going to cover a couple topics this season, and I'm really excited to be a little more open with you all and to be here. If you like my podcast, please do share it with others. As I said before, the podcast kind of went into like a sleeping podcast hibernation zone, I think. I don't really know. Maybe that's not even true. Maybe I don't even want to speak it into that space. But I just am so grateful that I have you, the people who listen and who have reached out to me and who have shared with me about their experiences. you guys are part of the reason that I feel like I can keep going, because your feedback and the way that you connect to me and have shared your stories with me has meant absolutely everything to me. Like I said, I was very alone in this experience in these past 9 months. I've been very alone. I felt very alone. And the connections I've had with those of you who I've been lucky enough to connect with in the Facebook group or in the academy, especially, or, just anywhere, has meant the world to me. So thank you so much. And I look forward to being back soon.